Yeah, it's good to see you all too. These are some of the best parts of what I have to look forward to each week, and it's nice to be with you all. I'm grateful for Dave and for Nan and all of their work with you, as well as vestry. And just want to visit a little bit about what's going on in the wider church. And that way, I think maybe you all can find yourselves in the midst of that and maybe not feel quite so alone as we're trying to navigate the coronavirus and everything. And so, and then we'll have some time for conversation, questions, or maybe there's something that you're interested in knowing about that I didn't bring up. So I'm just happy to engage, and then always the conversation is always the best part. So, you know, first off, I'm really grateful to you all and to your vestry. I got to have a meet with the vestry for a little while, and just like I would have in a regular visit to the congregation, and read through kind of what was going on and the minutes and everything in advance of that meeting. I felt like we had a good conversation. And again, just to say that I think that you all have led really well there in Marble Falls and trying to move through the year. It's hard to imagine it's coming to an end, and all kinds of mixed emotions about that and where we are, I think, across the diocese. But just as your bishop, to kind of as a mirror reflect how well I think you all have done this, and that's certainly been an all hands on deck piece of work to arrive at this moment, and to do so safely and taking care of one another and being safe with one another, even as we look at continuing to gather. That's the other thing I would say, is I think that as your bishop and with the other bishops and certainly all the clergy of the diocese, we can't wait. We're just like you. We can't wait to gather. Like, we're really missing you all and our regular personal relationship with you. And, you know, after being canon for 5 years and bishop for 12, I know many of you on the phone call today, on the Zoom meeting today. And you know, part of the best thing about visitation is meeting old friends again and seeing and making new ones, you know. And that's I miss it, and I think we're all eager to begin to regather, but we're also want to do that safely. It's kind of like a lot of churches have been doing surveys, and so they, you know, do you want us to regather? And it'll be like 95% of the people in the congregation will say, yes, we want to gather. And then they'll ask, will you come if we gather? And then about 30% of the people say, yes, we'll come if you gather. You know, so I think everybody's just trying to take this step by step and figure out their own kind of capacity for gathering and sorting all of that out. But I think all of us are eager to do that, to get back together, to worship regularly together in person. And I think there's a good amount of hope right now because of the vaccine, and we're hopeful that we have less time in front of us than we do behind us, and that's a good feeling. I was writing something to somebody the other day about, and I just said, you know, my prayers are with you, brother. And this, he was having a difficult time. My prayers are with you, brother. And I thought, you know, we really have come to know what brothers and sisters means in this new, having done this together, you know, that the grace that each one of us is given to the other to sort this out and to do that as well as we can has been a tremendous gift, not only to the family there at Trinity, but also in the wider diocese. As we look at what people are doing, everybody, you know, it's funny to talk to bishops around the country because they say, well, are you all open? Well, you know, we've got counties that don't have any coronavirus in, and some of those counties have been back to worship in person, though physically different, you know, separated with masks and everything since June. And then we have other parts of the diocese, like the Austin area or Houston area, that have right now have a huge amount of spread. And so it's really a very there's a wide gap between what people are doing based upon where they are and how safely they can gather. And when this new raised spread started to happen, a number of churches who were beginning to gather have gone back to video. So people are kind of making it based upon what's best for their community and trying to sort that out. And we as a diocesan office are being supportive of that. I don't see going back to closing down all the parishes unless the governor required us to do so, right? That my sense is that we've reached a point in the crisis where the best thing to do is to support local leadership as we move through it. I think that's part of the best thing about being Episcopalians is that we're best when we're interdependent, when we support each other, when the local congregation, local vestry, local clergy are making decisions together than when the bishop diocesan makes kind of overarching decisions for everybody. And so given the diversity of the diocese and where people are, we're trying to be supportive of that. The last thing I would say is that we remain concerned about the overall impact of the virus on our congregations long term. And so we continued the end of the year with a second series of grants to churches and organizations to support you all in the field. And we already have set up for 2021 another set of COVID-2 series of grants. So we think we have a little bit further to go before it gets better, and we're trying to have the backs of our congregations with any financial assistance that may be needed. And so looking at that as we go through the end of the year. So again, I was so happy to hear that things are going well there. And I think you all feel, from the outside, it feels like you're making good decisions and slowly figuring it all out. And the stewardship and leadership and vision for getting through this is really, really strong there. And I'm grateful for that. And I think it's a great example for other parishes when they're concerned or sorting it out. And I think that's kind of what I would say is that the clergy and have really leaned on one another, trying to do their very best in a probably the most difficult time that any of us will see in terms of ministry in our time period. But it's also just a little bit of ministry when you think about the lifetime of the church, or you think about our own lifetime within ministry, and Al-Anon, they say you can do anything for a short while as long as you know it's not forever. And some days that's about all I have for myself to get through. And I go back and I look at Nan and Dave have heard me say this, I really look towards the other bishops to see what happened. What did they do during the Spanish flu or the Great Depression or the World Wars? And what's amazing is they talk about the people and the ministries and the things that people did during those hard times. And they do that more than they talk about the hard time that they were experiencing. And so I think that's true here, that as we go through this, I have a lot more stories about blood drives and food drives and rental assistance and utility assistance and trying to take care of each other and prayer groups that got started up. And as we go through Advent, we've got people experimenting with drive-through nativities, and we had a water drive in Lake Jackson when their water was bad to drink. So it's just, I think at the end of the day, those are the kind of miraculous things that people have been a part of, and it's amazing to see what the church does when it really is hard out there. And so what a gift to me, which I don't think I could have imagined receiving But what a gift to be able to see that, and what a grace to see people working and surrounding each other with love in some of the most difficult times that people have faced in their lifetime. So kind of amazing. So with that, I've been doing meetings with the clergy, 4 and 9 at a time. I think I've got like 2 more left. I started out in September and visiting with all of them, and said I always like the conversation part. And just to tell you, we talked just about everything from liturgical theology to mission to what's going on in the rest of the Episcopal Church, to Anglican Communion work that we're doing, all of that. And I'm happy to just go down whatever rabbit trail you'd like to with our remaining time. So again, it's just thank you for having me today and getting to interrupt and sit with you during your coffee hour.
I'd just like to say quickly, because I may have to jump off a little bit early to get set up for church, but so while I have a chance, I just want to thank the bishop for your leadership during this really, really challenging time, for the guidance that you provided us, for the constant support that you've given us, and for the trust also in allowing us to make some local decisions. So I'm really appreciative for all the encouragement and all the guidance and the leadership that you've continued to provide for us and for 160 or so other churches throughout this diocese. That's an awful lot, and we're really grateful.
It's been my pleasure. So what would you all like to talk about?
So just unmute yourself as y'all want to speak. Unmute yourself and fire away with your questions.
So Bishop Doyle, I know you've been super busy taking care of all of your people. How are you taking care of yourself during this time?
Thank you for asking. I don't know about you all, but I felt a lot of strength and energy at the beginning, and then I tried to take some time off in the summer while it was quiet, but I ended up working about half a day every day just because we were still, people were still trying to figure things out. And I got to August and thought, I'm not going to make it. Like, how long is this going to be? And I've been telling the clergy, they'll tell you, I've been saying, this is 18 to 24 months. We got to, this is a marathon. I had been given all this spiel, and then I hit August, and it felt like for me, it was the 18th mile of a marathon. I just hit a brick wall and was like, how much longer is this going to happen? And I have a spiritual director and therapist, and we just kind of began to work through it. And, for me, I think very clear boundaries about where I've been working at home. I don't know about any of you all, but I found working at home was not healthy for me because work then became something I could do all day long. And so I might get up and get a cup of coffee and fiddle with something, but I'd work late into the evening. I was on my phone in the evening. So creating some real clear boundaries were helpful. You see, I'm in the office today. I moved back to the office this fall. I haven't been there all the time, but last couple of weeks kind of making it regular. And there's something about, and I'm like the only one here most days, but there's something about that buffer of driving home or driving to the office that really cleanses and allows me to leave work at work and kind of come home. I would say that the biggest deliverance has been getting outside, walking. I went camping for a couple of days with some friends in a pod with me, and reading something that's not churchy, binging movies and television shows. So, and then we have a pod that we have dinner with once a week, and that's really been salvific to laugh with other people. I mean, we still sit 10 feet apart, you know, outside this whole time, but it's, we were all in blankets the other day because it was so cold. So that's what I've been doing. And I think I told the clergy it's really a time to look at examples like Shackleton's journey to the South Pole, or the women's, the journey the women's national soccer team, football team made towards their gold medal, or like the great debaters from Tyler. Because I think there has to be, to make it, I think you have to work hard, but then you also have to play, rest, eat healthy, you know, like there's also these other things that we all know, right? But we have to be disciplined about it to make it. Thank you for asking. And I'm doing well, and family's doing great. And my freshman in college went to school from home, but leaves us in January. And my older daughter, Kaisa, Zoe's the one at home. Kaisa's doing great and applying for social work school for the fall. So we're good. We're good. Thank you.
I just want you to
You
know that
mentioned
David-
reaching. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Madeline.
You mentioned that helping people was what bishops in the past did during the previous hard times that we've had. What do you see from your vantage point as the most pressing needs of the people who are not necessarily in Episcopal churches, but the community at large?
So I think there are a couple of really scary trends right now. One is the trend of people, the percentage of Texans that said, and I don't have it in front of me right now, but there was an article recently, and the percentage of Texans who said that they were hungry in the last week has just grown dramatically, and continues to get worse because of the other number, which is the workforce. Now, as we continue to try and reopen and do that, that's getting a little better, but there are a lot of people who've lost jobs, or who maybe had 3 jobs who's lost 2 of those, right? So the people who are just kind of right on the edge, who didn't have any savings, these folks are really struggling for food, rental assistance, and utility assistance. And all of that's having an effect on mental health. So the mental health crisis that we're going through, and the numbers of suicides right now are growing exponentially in Texas. So these are very serious citywide issues across Texas that people are trying to address. Did you have a follow-up, Madeline?
Yes. What is the diocese doing to address these questions?
Well, a lot of it has to be done locally through the work of local congregations. The diocese is helping, though. We can provide continued mental health training, which is a thing that we've been doing. We're doing it online now. The diocese also has made grants to some of our congregations in the poorest parts of Texas to provide money for rental assistance and utility assistance. And the diocese also has spent this year kind of continuing to support, even in the downturn in people's jobs. We've been supporting clinics across the diocese. I'm going to pull up something here and see if I can find it before we go. But we spend about 15, let's see here. I think you'll be interested in this. Here we go. This is a good one. I'm going to share my screen really quick. Hopefully you all will be able to see this. Slideshow. There we go. All right. So what you see, this is just one small amount, but you take 2020, we've continued to give. This is our total giving, outreach grant giving from the diocese since 2013. But you see that we've continued to do access to healthcare, funding clinics across 57 counties, a whole lot of early childhood health, the Raise community awareness piece has been a huge part of what we've been doing, and trying to provide means by which people work on health and not just health care. So beyond just the clinic provision of health care, we've looked at how we can help families improve their overall health care. And then might get more specific and look at some place like El Buen Samaritano in Austin, or a St. Vincent's House, where this year we've given over $1 million to help support the ongoing work of those institutions of the diocese and reaching out. So, you know, as a diocese, your money, your foundations, we continue to do a ton of support across the 57 counties during this time. And we also gave an additional $5 million in COVID grants to our clinics to make sure they would stay open and continue that health care during this time. And when you look at El Buen Samaritano as an example, they normally see 150 to 200 families a year. That's not right. 150 to 200 families a week, sorry. And they have seen upwards of 800 families a week. So the need, just to give you a sense of the need that we're kind of backstopping as a diocese, is tremendous. And I'm really proud of us for doing it. And yet I think too, that some of the most miraculous work is, hey, the food pantry in our town needs help. And so doing a drive-through food drop-off and then a drive-through food pickup. Like, so St. James Houston did this last week, where the week before they did a drive-through food gathering for their parishioners, and then the week after they did a drive-through food where they would give food out to families. So, you know, it's like from the smallest to the largest, pretty amazing.
I just wanted to say that we're very grateful for Dave and Nan and their leadership and their persistence, their creativity, their calmness, and they've allowed a lot of opportunities that other parishes don't have. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, they have done an outstanding job.
Bishop Carl Nickel, a little early question maybe, sir. Annual conference, any thought about that? Council, any thoughts about that yet?
Yeah, we're doing an online council, and you know, some of that has to do with our size. There just is we even looked at whether or not we could not have exhibits and just use the whole. We're supposed to be in Galveston this year, and look at whether or not we could use the whole conference center. And even then we couldn't provide a safe indoor space for gathering 1,000 people. And that's our problem. The problem is the numbers. You know, many dioceses are doing in-person councils because they only have 35 people who attend, right? Or a smaller group, right? So they can find space, they can do it. But most of the diocesan councils across the country have been virtual. So we'll do a virtual one. There's very little business. We made an effort to say that we would hold Constitution and canons and resolutions till next year. We're going to do courtesy resolutions to our seminarians and all of that, but that's all. And so the only business will be elections and the budget. And the budget's a decreased budget, flat budget in terms of salaries and all those kind. I mean, we really have passed on as much savings. We're taking about $1 million overall decrease in our diocesan budget. So there's not much to debate there, but that'll be the only debatable item that we would have. So we're trying to do that. The other part is we're recording a large number of the council reports. So a lot of times, you go to council and you have a report and nobody hears about it unless they read the journal and the minutes. And so this year we'll have about 2 weeks before council, we'll start releasing videos for you all to share. And if you're interested in Camp Allen, for instance, you'll have a video about what's going on at Camp Allen, or maybe you're interested in El Buen Samaritano or St. Vincent's House or Episcopal Health Foundation, what they've been up to. So all those reports will be released in advance of council. So on the morning of council, we'll gather for worship, which will be morning prayer. And then we will do Bible study and Bible reading. We're trying to debate whether or not we can break this many people up into Bible study groups. But we're going to do our Bible reading prayers like we normally do. And then the only thing that'll be Saturday would be my address, which will be much shorter because I'll do a report beforehand. And then the voting and the budget. So and I think we'll learn, we're not going to not have council in person. That's like, I love council, actually. So maybe another bishop will come along and decide that's something that they want to try and do. We'll let that be what that is. But at least for the next 12 years, we're going to do council in person if we can and do it safely. But I do think we're going to learn something. I actually think the reports by video are a great way of communicating to people in the pews what's going on. And so, our expectation wouldn't be that everybody watches every video, but I do think people in the pews are interested about what's happening in the rest of the diocese. And so to have some options of hearing about a program or a ministry or something that you are particularly interested in, I actually think that's a great thing. So I can imagine us adopting some new behaviors because of this, and we'll do our best. And we're also talking about a fall family reunion at Camp Allen. Like, just if you want to come, we'll open up the camp kind of after the vaccines and stuff have made their way through, and people could come and we just spend a weekend together, kind of something in late September, early October or something like that. So we're thinking about that because I do think we'll miss the fellowship. That's the part we'll miss the most, right?
Bishop Doyle, do you anticipate that the churches will continue to use live streaming services after the pandemic? We've seen some of
I do. I hope they will. I actually think there are a lot of people who, what we've realized is that we are missing out in worship attendance for people who are stuck at home, even when they're just not feeling well, let alone those who are actually homebound, right? So there's this whole other population that we're realizing could be a part of our church life, attend not just worship, but who, I don't know about, I can't remember what we've talked about here, but we have more people in Bible studies, more people in prayer groups, and more people in book groups right now participating than we've ever had, because people don't have to drive to the church to do something. So I think there'll be a lot of adaptive behavior as we go forward, because we've learned that there's some ways of gathering that are really good for us. The other piece of that is already before the virus, 75% of our confirmands, we have about 13 to 1,500 a year of new members that we confirm across the diocese. And probably about 75% of that based on kind of asking the question routinely in the smaller groups, found the churches by websites and then listened to sermons. So what we also know is that online worship is an evangelism tool whereby people can, who might be nervous about attending for the first time, can kind of test drive a church, just like they were test driving sermons, looking to see whether the values in the congregation match their values and those things. And so my sense is that we want to keep doing it because it opens up another doorway for evangelism when people are seeking to find a community. So yeah, we've been talking about it since 2012, and here within a year we had like 90% of our churches go online. So I think that it'll test us though, right? Which is, we all know that you can have a great live worship that stinks on video, and you can have great video worship that stinks if you tried it live. So I think there's going to be some adaptive figuring out how to actually do that well, but I think people will continue. At least that's what most of the clergy are saying. Good question, Christine. Well, I know we're running up at the end of time. We probably have time for one more before I think we have to head for worship.
Bishop, I do, unless
Sure.
anybody else. We've talked about the positive things that have come out of the pandemic, like live streaming, and Trinity now does that very well. What, aside from those sort of behaviors, what other, if we think of this as our time of pregnancy during this, what other stirrings of the Spirit being nurtured in this darkness do you see or do you hope will come to bear fruit, so that we not are just thinking about going back to the way things were, but what new is waiting to be born, do you think?
Well, I think that's a great and wonderful question to imagine and be curious about. My sense is a couple of things seem obvious. A goodly number of us have realized how much community means to us. And so coming out of this, I think there's going to be a deeper sense of desire for community that matters. And that people aren't just going to spend time on just anything, right? So there's a value. People have woken to have a greater sense of the value of being together. I also think a longing for the Eucharist has been a gift of this season, that we've awoken to realize how important, a Eucharistic theology, which was really brought back to the church in its fullest form in 79, right? So if you think about it, it's literally not that long ago in terms of the great span of Anglicanism, but that Eucharistic centrality has really taken hold of our own spirituality and liturgical theology. And I think it's caused us to go deeper in that, because I think we were unprepared to have to discuss the kind of breadth of Eucharistic theology that we actually have. And so I think that's, I think as hard as it's been, I think people have realized that the daily office is actually an amazing part of our communal life together. I think some people are not going to come back, and I think some people have joined us. And so I think there's some sorting out to do. And I think one of the hardest things that's before us is to think about, once we come back into worship and begin to move forward, how will we not get trapped in terms of looking inwardly, right? So like the great draw is to come together, but we've spent so much time being missional and thinking about evangelism and how to serve our community. How does that continue? And how are we attentive to the outward things in our community? Like, that was a great question. What are we doing? What are you doing? Right now, the average giving of money to organizations outside of the church to do service and outreach is 3% of the budget. right? So how does that shrink as we come back together, or could we actually grow that to a tithe amount, right? Every church is different. That's just an average across the diocese. And then the last thing I think we're going to be challenged by is not just how do we kind of come back together, but then continue to embrace the mission of the gospel. The other piece is, what do we do when people we haven't seen in 2 years come back? You know, I was talking about us feeling like brothers and sisters together, but what happens when one of our lost come back to us, or somebody we haven't seen for whatever reason, who knows why, and they want to re-enter community, and how well will we do in embracing them? And I think there's something to learn about that in the our own theological history around the Donatists, but I also think there's something to learn about that because it's deeply a piece of missional life together as attractional churches, which is how do you really welcome people who have been away for a while or never known community? And I think those things are going to deeply continue to work on us. And then maybe we'll have to deal with our own reconciliation work together about how we treated each other. By far, I think we've treated each other with a tremendous amount of grace, but the political and COVID tide have created some hurt feelings in our community, and how will we mend those? So there's a lot of work to do. At the same time, it's church work. It's what we're actually supposed to do all the time. So, I think, I just think it's going to have kind of a particular edge to it that'll be beautiful to lean into, right? I mean, we're going to learn about ourselves and each other, and just as we have now. We're a pretty tenacious group of people.
Bishop Doyle, if I might, I know we're short on time. I love the discussion about the Eucharist. And for me personally, COVID has presented the longest time in my adult life that I have gone without partaking in Eucharist.
Right.
And it was very difficult, surprisingly so.
Right.
And that taught me numerous things about myself and about the gift of that grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just sitting here thinking about some time that I spent at the Wildflower Center. And we often talked about a sense of place. And I'm just reflecting that the Trinity campus, not the sanctuary alone, has a sense of place for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has been glorious for those of us who choose to not be in a confined air-conditioned space to be able to partake on an ongoing basis of the Eucharist. And I just wonder if that's also something that we should continue to explore about where else on our campuses can we make this available that's not just Sunday morning at 10:30 or whatever, as a way to also feed us, but maybe other members of our community that for whatever reasons don't feel comfortable in the confines of four walls. And we have huge possibilities, I think, and it keeps the Eucharist. We're not making it a circus. That's not what it is. It keeps it sacred and holy, but it expands the vision of that.
No, that's like the greatest softball to end conversation on. I mean, I think this is exactly what the missional movement's about, which is how do we set a table up in the wilderness of other people's lives and offer Christ, a living symbol of a Christ community that includes a Eucharistic life to the world. And how does that move from the four walls out? And to say that the real challenge isn't just to stop at the edge of our property, but to figure out the other spaces in the world where that can happen. It's a beautiful image of it, and it's a Pentecost image, right? I mean, that's an image of a church that comes together, right? So we know that the first disciples who all became apostles, right? Jesus didn't leave any disciples, just followers. They all became people who went on God's behalf. And how do we nurture our own spirituality and life around the Eucharist and Christ's presence, but then also how do we go on Christ's behalf? How do we engage our vocations to speak on God's behalf in the world and set that table up in the wilderness? So I think, yes, exactly. Like we could survive doing Eucharist outside, we've discovered. Oh, wow, that's amazing. So like, you know, I think that's a gift, like Nan was talking about. Here's a great gift of our time. So time probably to go. Thank you all.
Yeah, well, thank you again so much, Bishop, for your words of hope. I've written that down. How do we set a table up in the wilderness of other people's lives? That is a wonderful way of encapsulating the work that is before us. So thank you for that. Thank you again for all your leadership and your time with us this morning. And just a reminder that Bishop Doyle is also our preacher this morning. So hope you will all join us on YouTube or in person. We'll also be hearing his sermon here in church. We'll hear that recording. And so we'll see you all in about 15 minutes. Thanks again, Bishop. Take good care of yourself.
Yeah,
God bless you.
You all. See you later.
All right. Bye.